Hey guys, Tyler with Meeple Mountain here, bringing you another board game review. This time from our friends at Ivy Studios, who have given us an advanced copy of Scales of Fate. This is a two-player specific version of Veiled Fate, set in the Veiled Fate universe, and it follows that same idea where you and an opponent are going to be working with the various demigods in the Veiled Fate universe, where you will be working to manipulate the fate of these demis while moving your two favored demigods in the right direction and making sure that you come out on top. Now, you're going to want to hide who your favorite demis are as best you can through a lot of subterfuge and distraction, because if you guess your opponents correctly, you will gain some bonus points, or maybe lose some if you don't guess very well at the end of the game. So this is a little bit of a hidden deduction style game, a little bit of a bluffing and secret information style game, all distilled down and really strategically built around the two-player interactions. Now, you guys know I love duel style games. I think that the balance has to be so tight, and I'm really excited to get to the table and show you everything that Ivy has packed into this little box. So without any further ado, let's check out Scales of Fate. Welcome to the land of Scales of Fate. This is a world set in the Veiled Fate universe, so you're going to see and feel some similarities here. But if you've not played Veiled Fate, you are going to be taking on the role of a deity, a divinity of some form and fashion that has tried to gain some favor. You may have parented one of these 9 demigods that are kind of down in the mortal world. They have power, they're gifted, but we don't really want other deities to know who is our child, right? It's kind of a hush-hush secret thing, kind of taking that trope from Greek mythology. We want to keep this one under our hat a little bit. But we want our children to do well. We want them to be blessed and to have a wonderful, prosperous life because, selfishly, that brings glory to us as well. So, at the start of the game of Scales of Fate, you and your opponent, this is a two-player specific game, are going to be dealt 2 of the 9 cards representing the demigods. The decks of cards are the exact same, so you could share parentage with the same demigod between these 2 divinities, but you're going to have 2 that you favor. You are going to be working throughout the course of 3 ages or epochs of time throughout Scales of Fate to bless and benefit that demigod, those demigods, in as much of a way as possible. You do this because at the end of the 3rd age, you will be able to score victory points equal to how well you did. For instance, let's say the pink and the green demigods were my favored champions throughout the game. And you see that we start at 7 points here, right in the middle of either doing good or bad from a kind of a fate victory point perspective. Throughout the course of the game, we will be placing various gods on these different action markers, these kind of big chunky nodes here that have a wonderful feel to them. We'll be doing different things. We'll be claiming servants, taking some particular godlike actions, all of that to kind of really drive where our gods end up, where what gods end up on the board, and then scoring them some victory points based on the different markers that they're around. And we'll talk about that more in detail in a moment. But keep in mind, pink and green are my favorite gods. As we go through the ages, we'll be scoring points, doing things, and we ultimately want to get the most points that we can at the end of the age for our demigod's placement on the victory point track. Just having more points is not necessarily a good thing. And let's talk about why that is. So, at the end of the game, if both of my demigods are on the exact same location on the board, I'm going to score that many points. In this case, 8. I would score 8 points because they share the same space. Now, conversely, if I had them split up, they were on different places, I would score the difference between those 2 point locations. So you could have a gameplay style where you have a very wide spread like this. You try to do something crazy like that. You could try to have them together to get the most points. There's different strategies, and the reason for that, of course, is subterfuge. We don't want our opponent to know what gods we're favoring, right? Because if I walk into the game and all I'm doing all game is trying to get pink and green as many points as possible, well, my opponent is certainly going to, 1, know who my demigods are, and we'll talk about why that's bad in a moment, and 2, they're going to work against me, right? They're going to try to mess with my score on those demigods. So you want to be sneaky. You want to kind of spread the love, at least the appearance of love, around with the different demigods to distract and diffuse suspicion about who your gods are, that your demigods are, that you're trying to favor, right? And have the best outcome for. Now, what's really fun about Scales of Fate is you're going to have a little clue card here. Everybody gets one, and you're going to use that to mark not only who your gods are, who you favor, but also what you think about your opponent. Because at the end of the game, you are going to have a guess. You're going to have 2 guesses, because there's 2 gods. You're going to guess the 2 gods you think your opponent favors. And then we're going to reveal. And if you are correct about those 2 gods, you will score 3 additional points at the end of the game, which can make or break you for sure in Scales of Fate. If you only get one of the 2 guesses right, you get a point, and that's still nice, it's a consolation prize. But if you get neither of your guesses right, you will actually lose a point. So you want to make sure you're paying attention, taking notes, and trying to deduce who your opponent is working to benefit the most. And that is the real kind of the meat and potatoes of Scales of Fate. You're going to be trying to deduce that over the course of 3 ages. You might say, well, that seems really difficult. Well, don't worry. There are some extra steps as well that will really help get your gears churning, kind of get things moving. You'll notice here, this is our age 1 card. In every age, it's going to kind of change the layout of these tiles. Everything here will move around. There's going to be these main chunky bits. There's these kind of green and white missions. Those are going to be tied to certain servants. We'll talk about that in a second. And they will either give you or lose you points or fate, reputation on the board. There are also these big chunky guys here. These are going to give you servants. They will let you do some scoring. That's the main way you're going to manipulate the status of a particular demigod. There are also godlike powers. There is the smite action here that will send a god into the abyss where they may lose or gain points based on where that abyss status is. There's also the god ability to adjust the fate of the abyss. So for instance, if my god goes into the abyss, here, this green guy, and I have moved the abyss tracker to the positive side at the end of the age, that particular god will actually gain a victory point or a fate, a standing, right? So that's a good thing, or could be a good thing, depending on whose god they are, how I feel about that. You could also then kind of have this tug of war where you start moving it down to this side. There's lots of things that can happen to gods who kind of fall into the abyss. The other thing is at the end of an age, once we've done our scoring, we're going to look at this little qualifier at the top for renown. So this track up here, it's going to say demis at 4 to 6 renown. So if there's any demis in these sections, what's going to happen is both players have to say whether 1 or 2, any of their demis, fall into that range or meet this, whatever this requirement is. There's all different kinds of types. Right now, there's 3 of each age card, so you can see there's lots of replayability there. But if this was the case, and pink and green, of course, are my demis in this illustration, they do fall into this, I would have to tell my opponent, yes, 1 or more of my demis are in that range. So now my opponent instantly knows, oh boy, at least 1 of these 4 demis are someone that I'm looking for, are one of my opponent's demis. So this is kind of where you start to deduce things as well. You may want to try and kind of actively start to manipulate where different demis go so that you can start trying to kind of narrow the playing field down and figure out who is favoring who within the game. So that's kind of where the real strategy and the meat and potatoes comes into play. But let's talk about turn-by-turn structure and what you're going to do on any given turn within a game of Scales of Fate. Zooming in just a little bit here so you can get just a quite closer glimpse of kind of how this works, let's talk again about what you'll do on your turn. So on your turn, it's really simple. You can place a god on one of the open action slots. So I could place him here, for instance. I could not place a god if they're already there, and of course I can't take them out of the abyss anyway. It has to be one of the available new gods on a new space. Quite clean, quite simple. When you do this, you're going to take the corresponding action. The action would be, here on these 3 examples, I would gain the incorporated servant. So in this case, I would gain the green Scorpius servant. We'll talk about them in just a second. If I was to go here, I would gain the white servant. If I go here, I would gain one of the 2 red servants. We'll talk about what they all do in a second. And then if I go here or here, I gain the power, the god power associated. So if I went here, I would smite a god, any other god, into the abyss. So for instance, I could smite a god here that's already been played, so I could place a new god there if I really wanted to get them in that position. Also, if I was to go here, that again alters this fate kind of impact of being in the abyss. So if there's bad gods, quote unquote, that I don't want, or bad demis in here I don't want to benefit, I could move them, over here to hurt them, make them lose renown. I could also go to the right, try and benefit those gods that are in the demis that are in the abyss. So there's lots of options and ways that you can play, but the game, the round will end once all of these spots are full and once the servants have been placed. Now the servants are the real bread and butter, kind of the key to the strategy of the game, and it's the main way that you're going to gain and lose renown as well. So let's talk about them. There's really mainly a green and a white servant, and then these little red guys that kind of do their own thing. So the green servants and the white servants, all servants, are placed on the outside track here on any side. And what they do is they're going to activate the whole row or the whole column of wherever they're placed. So for instance, if I was to place here, I'm going to affect every green mission that's laid out here. and it's going to affect any gods that are adjacent to them. So this would be a really good, interesting play if I went here. I would impact purple twice, giving them a total of 3 positive renown. So they'd shoot up the track, which is huge. Orange here is also going to be affected, losing 2 renown because they're here. Now I could, of course, if I didn't want to maybe benefit purple in that way, I could go here to still affect orange. He would still, even though I'm activating this, he would still only lose the 2 renown because, of course, he's not adjacent here. White works the exact same way. Even if I put over here, I'm activating this whole column, which means orange would gain and green would lose 1 renown each. So these are quite kind of the core way that you manipulate and activate things. So you could see, like, maybe if you knew your opponent was going to try to do something, maybe your opponent took this and was going to try to maybe do something here with purple, you might know to try and manipulate where you go, or maybe even smite that god if you could to get him away so he doesn't gain those things. There's a lot of interesting strategy there. The little red servants are just kind of a weaker version of this ability where they only affect the thing that they're adjacent to or touching. So for instance, if I just went here, I'm just going to give orange 1 positive renown, right? They're only going to activate the thing that they are actively touching. So they're not quite as powerful as the other 2 servants, but there are more of them, and you can use them in some tactical ways. It can be very key to just help orange, and then I'm not helping green in this instance. So there's lots of interesting strategy there. An age ends when all the spots are filled and all the servants are placed. We would then take this card, get it out of here, and we would go to the next age card. This would, again, we'd kind of take all these pieces out, we'd reshuffle them, we'd put new servant action tokens out on the board. As you can see, there's more of them as well, so there's more places to go. We'd shuffle them all up, we'd place them back out on the board with a specialty red one, replacing the specialty red that was here, and we would continue into the next age, doing this exact same flow again until we get to that third age where we would guess and reveal the demis that we think our opponent is favoring, and then we would tabulate our score, tabulating it by where the 2 demis are on the track, whether they're together or separate, and if we got those guesses about our opponent's demis correct or incorrect. We tabulate that score together, and the person who has the most victory points at the end wins. Quite simple, quite an easy piece of math. Now, the last piece of the puzzle here to talk about, because there's some really interesting strategy here, you do have one more thing that you can do on your turn, and that is utilize god powers. Because you are a god, what's fun of being a god if you can't use god powers? You have 3 over here on the right: steal, switch, and smite. Smite, we'll start with, is very familiar. If you want to use this on your turn, you say, I'm going to use a god power smite. Smite, of course, sends a guy off into the abyss. Pretty standard stuff there. Switch lets you swap the location of 2 existing gods. So you could swap 2 gods that are on the map. You could swap a god for a god who's out on the map. Whatever you want to do, you can switch the positions of 2 gods that are in play. Steal allows you to take a servant token that someone else has. So for instance, if my opponent has the white servant, I really don't want him to do a big combo here and give, affect what's going on with purple in this case. I could steal that so that I could use it somewhere else in that age. Now, the god powers are very strong. They're used once per game, but the trick is at the end of the game, once you use that power, you have to flip it over, and you will actually start to lose victory points. That's kind of shown by this sickle here, but this is an actual negative victory point for you at the end of the game. So even if I do really well and I guess all of my opponent's gods, demigods that they favor, if I've used all the god powers in this game, I'm losing 3 points right here. So that can be a big swing too. So you really want to be careful when choosing to use your god powers, because while they are helpful, they are very tactical, they come at a heavy cost. So you kind of have to balance that strategy as well. So as you can see, this game is super easy to teach. The iconography is simple. The placement is very easy and straightforward. The real intricacy comes with how you choose to kind of let this unfold and how you choose to try and use the particular missions, we'll call them, or quests for each age that kind of give you information, and how you kind of peel and meld all that together to have a winning strategy and come out with more information and in a better position than your opponent at the end of 3 ages. And that is everything you need to know to jump in and have a really good time with Scales of Fate. Now, I have to be honest, this was a little bit of a weird video to shoot and teach because everything is so kind of connected. I didn't kind of have those segments that I try to have on my video, so I hope it all made sense and came together well. But all that to say, this is a really wonderful 2-player game in the sense that it is truly very, very easy to teach. The mechanisms are quite simple. The actions are incredibly limited on your turn. You do a thing. It's very quick and clean. You can decide if you want to use a god power, but those are once per game, so that's not happening very often. The decisions and the intricacy really come down to what god do I place where so that I can use servants to impact them and prevent maybe my opponent from using servants to benefit who I think they're working on, and all of that kind of happening on the surface, where underneath the iceberg, right, kind of hiding underneath is, whose god do I really think my opponent is working to benefit, and how do I figure that out while I simultaneously move and advance my gods in a way that's beneficial, whether spreading them out or bringing them together at a high end? Because of course, if you're trying the high end strategy, that's probably the best way to make the most points quick. But of course, if two gods are kind of always just hanging out together on the score track, that's a big no-no, right? That's a pretty clear sign that something's wrong. So you might want to split them, but that's pretty tricky to do too. And so there's lots of interesting strategies of how you want to play this and how you want to kind of bluff your opponent. It's really fun if you have a good gaming buddy and you want to run 2 to 3 games of this, and maybe you even know each other's strategies a little bit. This game plays very different with someone who knows your tells and your table talk strategies and your sneaks as much as a stranger, right? So that's really interesting about this too. There's a lot of really cool depth that comes about how you try to kind of do that shuffle while deduce what's going on with your opponent. Again, super easy to teach. I love Ivy Studios. They have great rule books. Even the kind of prototype rule book that I had was very clear. I had no questions about how this worked and what things did and how to build it out. So that was really fun. Again, I'm super looking forward to this coming on to crowdfunding sources soon. It's going to be a hit. There's a lot of fun here. If you enjoy Veil Fate as I do and love that big party game feel, and you really want to truncate that down into 2 players, Scales of Fate has done that masterfully. So I have nothing but super quality things to say about the production value that's in here, and I know that's going to just continue to shoot up as the kind of the deluxe editions come out. This is just the base, which is all these nice hefty, chunky wooden bits that just have a good heft and feel to them. And there's a lot of fun to be had here. So again, if you're looking for a 2-player kind of social deduction strategy game that's easy to teach, plays pretty quick, but not shallow or shy on the strategy and the intricacies there, then I would encourage you to check out Scales of Fate. Again, so glad that Ivy gave us an advanced copy to check out. As always, we love partnering with them. I highly recommend you guys give this game a view if you're looking for something in that kind of niche, right? It's definitely a niche, but it's a really fun niche. So I would encourage you guys to check it out. But thank you guys for coming to Meeple Mountain. I hope that this preview gave you a chance to understand how this game plays, how Scales of Fate plays, what to expect when you open up the box, and if it might be right for you. I hope you'll continue to come to Meeple Mountain for all of your board game related content and needs, and let us know in the comments if there's a game you'd love to see reviewed in the future. We make content because we love games just like you, so we hope you'll continue to come back. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video, and as always, happy gaming. Thanks for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out these links to find some other games you might want to bring to the table. This is Tyler Williams, signing off.